10 minutes, you're still tied.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set!
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond. Listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands, heard around the world on the iHeart Radio application. All right, we got a lot to get to, especially with the NFL, man. What a wild weekend it was in the NFL over the weekend as well. The Clemson Tiger men's basketball team blew out the Pitt Panthers 75-48, a big win for them. They needed it. But I want to talk about the fact that our good buddy Terrell Mcintyre was inducted into the rafters there at Little John Coliseum. And, you know, I sat down with T-Mac a little over a year ago, almost 2 years ago. He's the director of player development at Clemson. And I thought, man, you know, we had such a good response to that Ikari Turbe interview last week. Let's reset our interview with Terrell Mcintyre. And of course, the interview took place right as COVID-19 was sort of growing into a huge deal. This was in May, so the ACC tournament had been canceled, but really wanted to focus on a lot of those memories with Terrell from his time in Little John Coliseum. And again, congratulations to one of the best, maybe the best Clemson or former Clemson men's basketball player. Just a incredible guy to watch on the court. I wish he had played in a more modern era where there was just more ease to the access of the videos of his play. Here's our interview with T-Mac on the show that shakes the Southland from May 2020. Our good buddy Terrell Mcintyre in the house. T-Mac, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey, what's up? How you doing, man? Good. Doing good as can be during this time, but all is well. How about you guys?
We're great. Just kind of holding it down. And what we've really been trying to do is tell the story of former Clemson athletes and really athletes in general, maybe even guys in the media, if you can believe it, that played sports back in the day. I haven't gotten into any of my, great basketball legendary stories yet for the people, but I want to talk about you for a minute and some of your earliest memories. I know Tiger fans remember you from all the big shots you hit during your career and just a slashy 3-point shooting left-handed guard for the Tigers. But when Terrell Mcintyre thinks back on his sports life and his life in sports, what are some of your earliest memories?
My earliest memories in sports really is baseball. That was the first sport. That was actually the first team sport that I played was baseball. And I thought I was going to be a baseball player. To be honest with you, I played little T-ball, little league, and I was a left-handed shortstop, believe it or not. So one of the few of those at an early age. Obviously, you can't play that position as you get older in the big leagues of basketball. Baseball, as far as high school or middle school. But little league and T-ball, I was a left-handed shortstop. Nobody couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to be, Ozzie Smith. Left-handed Ozzie Smith.
Now, did you bat left-handed as well? Are you just a natural lefty at everything?
No, I'm righty. Only thing I can do left-handed, to be honest, is play sports. Is shoot a basketball, throw a basketball. Everything else is right-handed. I right-handed, eat, swing a golf club, swing a baseball bat. Everything else is right-handed. Only thing, anything I try to do left-handed without sports, I look really unorthodox.
That's pretty unusual that somebody, shoots a basketball left. Like I know guys that shoot the ball right-handed, but they swing left-handed. But to do some of the things that you do, much more natural with the basketball in your left hand, was that just something, when you were around your family, they didn't correct and you just kept going with it and got better? Or, has that always felt?
I just think that's just my natural. As sports is left-handed is just my natural, but anything else, I can't. I can barely use my left hand. It's just crazy. I can't cut with scissors with my left hand. That's just how ridiculous it is. If I try with my left hand, I can't cut a straight line. It's terrible. So anything besides sports, I just think it's just my makeup, my genetic makeup. My daughter actually is she writes left-handed, eats left-handed. She does a lot with her left hand, but she plays sports and softball right-handed. So I just think it's just something that's weird where only sports is catered to one hand and everything else you the other hand.
Terrell Mcintyre with us on Clemson Sports Talk. And Terrell, growing up playing baseball and you know, being a little bit different with that left hand, were people against it, you know, because I know I hear stories where people try to get guys to switch. Did anybody ever pressure you to, you know, adjust that at all?
Oh, they didn't. They didn't. I didn't even think nothing of it. You know, we didn't even think nothing of it because back then it wasn't. You just had your uncles. Obviously, I didn't grow up with my father, but we had my uncles, and you know, they were just out there showing me how to hit, not correcting what hand or whatever I should hit with, or they just showing me kind of like the fundamentals of the game. You know, obviously it didn't matter what hand you were or what, you know, domination was as far as right-handed or left-handed. But, you know, it was just teaching the game. You didn't have trainers now like you have now with, you know, it's a trainer for every specific thing that can help you get better as an athlete. That's why the kids now are way more skilled than we were. We were tougher, but they were more skilled. But to go back to your earlier question, I played whatever sport was in season. That's what I played. I played 3 sports all through high school, all growing up, all through high school. I played all 3 sports, and I actually was getting football offers. I played quarterback in high school. I was getting football offers. I had a couple of schools that wanted me to play both. D1 schools, low mid majors, but I wanted me to play both. But I played all sports growing up.
Well, and I think about, too, when I was a kid, there were some names in the local community, and you played at Hope County High School over in Rayford, North Carolina, right in the Fayetteville area. Who were some of those early influencers just in terms of guys that you could remember maybe on a Friday night going out to the stadium as a kid and rooting for? Do you remember any of those guys?
Oh, man, yes, I do, because them was the guys I looked up to. Obviously, like Michael Jordan was at, North Carolina when I was a kid, like 4 or 5. I remember real young. He came to my high school and played. But there are guys, Derek Graham, he ended up getting drafted in baseball. He was an all-around athlete. He played all 3 sports, and he was like the star of our city, and a basketball player, Pat Marcy, who was just could score the ball, could shoot. And I just thought he was like the best basketball player I had ever seen, coming up. So, So it was a couple guys growing up. Them 2 in particular. Another guy that we call Bucci, Lorenzo Fada. He was a smaller guy, and he was a guy who grew up in my neighborhood. He played like outside linebacker, and he was like 5'7", 5'8", like 140, 145, but his heart was just humongous, and I always took that from him. So them 3 guys was the guys that I really, really like looked up to and thought they were stars.
Terrell Mcintyre with us.
And nobody's ever heard of him.
Well, and this is what I was going to ask. So as an athlete who goes on to a great career at Clemson, you played basketball overseas, those guys that you looked up to when you were 7, 8, 9, and 10 years old, whatever it was, if you were to go back home today and see them, you probably still feel the same way about them, and they probably feel much differently about you. Would you agree?
For sure. Like, when I see those guys, one thing, I still see them to this day when I go home. I still let them know how big an influence they was in me coming through playing sports and building a career in athletics. I show them how much an inspiration they was to me and let them know. So they do know that. And then to see me obviously surpass some of the things that they did athletically, it shows when I come back, the love that they give me and the attention they give me is a lot different than when I was little or younger.
Terrell Mcintyre on Clemson Sports Talk, taking a look back at his life in sports. So I would deem you, and look, we're about the same size, as an undersized guard, especially at the Atlantic Coast Conference level. At what point in your playing days growing up did you recognize, okay, I might could do something with this? You mentioned you had a couple of offers maybe to play both football and basketball, but, to play in the Atlantic Coast Conference, was there a moment in particular where you're on the court, you did something, a coach says something to you? What was it that sort of flipped that switch into, okay, I can play in the ACC? Yeah,
it was always a dream of mine, to play in the ACC. Even though it was, I was good at other sports, I always loved basketball as well. And Michael Jordan was just like at the North Carolina Michael Jordan, not the, Chicago Bulls was later, and I was already kind of a basketball player then. But when he was in college, especially his early years, and I was really a young kid, I was like, I'm going to be like Michael Jordan, So he was we watched college basketball before now when everybody's games on TV, professional, college, back then it was just, NBA's on Sundays and Saturdays and 1 to 2 days during the week. It was Raytown Sports and ACC basketball. That's all we watched. So I grew up wanting to be in that league. So that definitely was a dream come true to make it to the ACC. But when I knew that I could play in the ACC wasn't until I got to high school. I always played against older guys. I played varsity as a freshman and played pretty well because I had already played against the guys on my team that was older because I played around with them in the neighborhoods throughout our city. And I always felt like I was on their level, if not better. So I felt like the level I would get to would be higher. It just took a little longer for colleges to recognize, I guess.
Terrell Mcintyre on the show that shakes the Southland, taking a look back at his career and his time, not only at Clemson, but leading up to that. Rick Barnes comes in, sort of a fire plug for the program, a program that wasn't all that well respected, but you and 6 other freshmen come rolling into Tiger Town and really take the world by storm, setting things on fire, I think, back in 1995. Just a fun year for a bunch of young guys that maybe didn't know any better.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't know. As freshmen, you come in, you just holding on to everything that your coaches say because you don't know. So you can get 110% and just like feeding everything you have into what your coaches are saying. So we was really a disciplined team because we were so young that anything Coach Barnes or Coach Scheid or Felton or Coach McDonald, any other assistant said, we was like doing it, What is looking back on it, we could see now as you older, like some of the stuff was just to get us motivated and to be on the same page. But, it didn't take a lot of pushing because we kind of catered to everything he said because we did have 7 freshmen and 1 sophomore and Greg Buckner and Merle Cole and Bill Harder was our only kind of upperclassman. Ikari Turbe was a sophomore as well, so we was a really young team our freshman year. And we just went out there and played and just oblivious to everything around us. We were just on the court. We just try to follow the game plan. And then before you know it, the wins started coming. And, we didn't even realize what we was doing, to be honest.
And back in that time, obviously, and I sound like we're speaking about, the Stone Ages, but I mean, in fairness, the freshman playing wasn't normal. I mean, there might be a guy or two, but, you guys are throwing Tom Lyman out there, Harold Jameson, you're getting plenty of playing time, Dracunas, Christie. I mean, it was different because, outside of the Fab Five, a lot of programs had, tended to lean on the upperclassmen, and Clemson just didn't have that luxury.
You rarely saw freshmen make a huge impact. It was every blue moon. Obviously, Stephon Marbury, we came in with him, and he was kind of a guy that was highly touted. Antoine Jameson ended up having a great freshman year and going on, but it wasn't the same publicity that Stephon Marbury had coming in. And, obviously the Fab Five kind of started coaches' confidence in playing younger guys or giving younger guys a chance, because really freshmen didn't really get that many opportunities. And the same with me is, Tom Wyman came in as a day one kind of starter, because we didn't have a center. So I remember early on, and especially in the beginning of the year, I'm looking at Tom like really impressed. Like, wow, I wish I could be starting. He started. I'm looking at Tom Wyman just like, man, he got a great opportunity. And little did I know that my opportunity would come during that season with a couple of injuries, unfortunate injuries to our guards and with Bill and Merle. And, I was through in the fire. And, I was always underdog. And I took a lot of pride in being the smallest scholarship player in the ACC. I took a lot of pride in that because I knew it was a lot of people my size and my stature that dreamed about playing and just didn't get the opportunity. So I wanted to make the most out of every opportunity that I had. And when I got that chance to play big minutes, I was like, man, I'm not looking back for nobody.
I do have to ask, I'd be lying to you if I told you, outside of being maybe a little bit thinner than you were, Alamir Dawes reminded me a lot of yourself this past year. Just a scrappy kid, undersized, but got after it. Did you see yourself in him this season?
I did for a couple reasons. His heart, number one. I had heart as a player, and you could see the heart that he has. And I think I didn't pass the eye test to a lot of people. And I think once you play and be around the person for so much, I tend to grow on people, grow on coaches, grow on my teammates, and they start to believe and build, and I build that trust.
Right.
And Al was the same way. He did some things this year that, really surprised us, to be honest, that we didn't know he could do as well as he could, and so it really felt good to see that, and for him to really surprised a few of his coaches that, knew how talented and that he was and the potential that was there, but didn't have no idea of the heart and the way he could defend on the ball at that level. That was some things that he did to really surprise us. And that's one thing that I did there, is to surprise people with some of the things that I could do that I didn't really think I could do.
You think these guys know how good you were back in the day? The guys on the team now?
No. They don't know. They see me now out of shape and, old and limping when I walk. They see clips. Obviously, they see clips and hear people talk about me, but it's like my son. My son, he's like, okay, you was good, but you weren't that good. He don't have no clue. He don't have no clue. But to go to your question, but no, I don't think those guys really understood the level that I played at, because I tell them, they'd be surprised because being number 2 in the history of the school and scoring, and never scored 30 points in one game in my career. And that really surprises a lot of them. Like, man, I never scored 30 points in college, not one time. And, but I was consistent.
And were you ever? And it was so much fun to watch. So there it was, a little archived interview with Terrell Mcintyre. The rest of that interview will be up over on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Again, that was from back in May of 2020, but this weekend, his name is now in the rafters. And again, I applaud the efforts of the athletic department. Jordan Roper, who's been a guest on this program numerous times, and just their passion to enhance the basketball brand. I mean, look, we can talk about the disappointing losses during Clemson's 3-game losing streak, a big victory this weekend, obviously against Pitt. We'll dive into that in just a little bit. But to me, like the thing about what we're talking about with this Clemson program is establishing a legacy. And I think it's important that you honor those people who delivered so much to your program by getting them in the rafters so you can celebrate them, but also it looks a lot better. Like I think there was a time at Little John Coliseum, and I may be leaving a name out, but I think the only names in the arena were Barbara Kennedy Dixon, Banks McFadden, Tree Rollins, and then there was maybe one more. Horace Grant. I think that was it. There were 4 names up there. I mean, and now you've got a bigger list of names in the arena, and that helps. I mean, I believe it helps. You don't have a lot of big time postseason banners, but you can enhance. You can say, hey, you can get your name up there in the rafters if you come here. And so it just makes it look a lot better. So kudos to those guys for getting that done. All right, we'll hit a quick break here on a Monday afternoon. And again, that full interview with Terrell Mcintyre will be up, much like the Ikari Turbe interview is up right now over on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Back at it on a Monday afternoon, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swan with you, man. Isn't that awesome to get a chance to listen to Terrell Mcintyre and some of those memories? And again, we'll put that full audio up over on the website shortly. Don't get it twisted. It'll be there, much like the Ikari Turbe interview is currently 803-450-0086. So I know it's the show that shakes the Southland. I know it's about college football, but my goodness, how can you deny what went down in the NFL this past weekend where every single game finished on the final play? 3 of them with walk-off field goals, all by the road team. And then the final game, the coup de grace, if you will, between Kansas City and Buffalo, going back and forth with 25 points scored in the final minute and 58 seconds or something like that. And you've got multiple just big moments. And I really think, and again, congratulations to Kansas City who came away with the victory in overtime. I hate the NFL overtime rule, but they did score a touchdown. The NFL overtime rule is a lot better than it used to be. Remember when it was just kick a field goal to end it? But the incredible weekend that we saw with the Rams, the Bengals, and the 49ers all advancing, in addition to the Bills and Chiefs going into overtime with the Chiefs advancing. What an improbable weekend of close games. And mind you, it to me boosts my conversation about having a bigger college football playoff. And I don't know, I don't get where some people come at me and say, oh, all it would do would make more blowouts. Yeah, maybe in the first round. But the goal is to get to second and third round games that are like what you just saw in the NFL. And I know that the NFL is created differently. It's built differently from the standpoint of the worst teams get the best draft picks. And I get all of that and the reseeding of the playoffs. But I don't know that would be necessarily be a bad idea collegiately either. I mean, if you went with the 10-player playoff the way the NFL does it, you'd still have a really good college football playoff, and maybe, just maybe, you might deliver some better games. And I'm not saying that every year the NFL is going to be like this, right? It's not going to always be a 3-point ball game. That's just impossible to believe that that's going to be the case. 19-16, Cincinnati advances over Tennessee. Again, the Bengals were the road team. Walk-off field goal to win it. San Francisco, the road team, in the snow over Green Bay. Walk-off field goal to win it, 13-10. Tampa Bay, Tom Brady falling after a huge comeback against the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams win it, a walk-off field goal, 30-27. And then Kansas City and Buffalo in overtime, 42-36. KC with the win. And for Buffalo, they took the lead by 3 points with 13 seconds remaining in the game. And my son and I were talking about it, and he said, "Look, Dad, you gotta, squib this ball. You gotta love it when your 12-year-old is talking about squibbing. That means he knows what he's doing. It means he understands the game." I said, "Well, I don't know if I'd squib it necessarily, but I'd certainly kick it short of the end zone." And they didn't. The Bills kicked it out of the end zone or into the end zone for a touchback, thus allowing the Kansas City Chiefs to have two huge plays, to drive down the field and tie the game on a 49-yard field goal attempt. And, when you give up, 44 yards on 2 plays, that's what happens. And they were playing that prevent defense, and that can prevent you from winning. But more than anything, in my estimation, they went 44 yards in 10 seconds. In my estimation, the biggest thing was not kicking that ball in the, short of the goal line, or even, I don't mind the squib there, but just boot one deep, squib it deep so that they have to scoop it up at like the 5-yard line or the 10-yard line. And then, I don't think there's enough time left for the Chiefs to get the game-winning field goal or the game-tying field goal. Then ultimately the Chiefs win the coin toss and ride off into the sunset as they will host their 4th consecutive AFC championship. Now, there are a lot of people out there. Tim Beret, legendary Clemson SID, who will be on this program. Lowell, the producer extraordinaire, who's been on this program and a part of this show for many years. A lot of people saying, look, the NFL game was decided by the coin flip. They hate to see the fact that the Bills did not get the football in an opportunity. But it is absolutely better than what we used to have in the NFL. And, we could say they didn't get a chance, but their defense did get to play, and they could keep them out of the end zone. Like in the NFL, if you don't follow it enough, if the Kansas City Chiefs had settled for a field goal or had to kick a field goal, then all Buffalo has to do is kick a field goal or score a touchdown to win the game. You have a chance defensively to get a stop. I hate it that it didn't work out and become like a better finish. I think most people would have liked to have seen Kansas City get a field goal and Buffalo get a shot with the football. But, buddy, you got to stop them. You got to be able to stop them defensively. And quite frankly, that whole overtime period happens because of poor coaching. Poor coaching gets you to that period. By the way, one of the other things that took place, I saw this tweet earlier today. Apparently, Kelsey told Patrick Mahomes, he said, I'm not going to run the route that I'm supposed to run. And Mahomes said, okay, go for it. Travis Kelsey, I'm probably not going to run the route that is called. Pat Mahomes said, do it. And he did it. And it turned out to be a huge play for the Kansas City Chiefs, who, again, will host the AFC Championship for what I believe is now a record 4th consecutive time. 803-450-0086. It is the show that shakes the Southland, rocking and rolling along with you on Fox Sports Radio 1400 and on the iHeart Radio app. Clemson Sports Talk text line and phone line always available. Don't forget about that. Like if you're watching the games this weekend and you're like, man, this is something I got to talk to my boy Swanny. I got to get on the horn with him. Then look, you can do it. That's why we have it set up that way. I want you to be a part of this show. It's kind of like in A Few Good Men. I want you on this show. I need you on this show. So, for me, when you're watching games play out the way that those did, if it gets the juice going and you want to be a part of the show that shakes the Southland, hit us up. We've had people drop, knowledge in on the show at 3 a.m. And some people say, good gracious, Swanny, I don't want to wake you up. Buddy, that thing is snoozed at that point. You're not waking me up. But I do want to hear from you because, those games this weekend in the NFL, as we talked about just a little bit ago, simply phenomenal. So now it sets up a couple of unique storylines. And I know everybody wants to see Josh Allen versus Pat Mahomes. I even saw some people comparing that rivalry to Brady and Peyton Manning. But now you get Mahomes versus Joe Burrow and this upstart Cincinnati Bengals team, which I honestly think the Cincinnati Bengals team has a lot of people really excited, but and especially getting the chance to watch T. Higgins. I think, it's going to be tough for them to beat this high-powered Kansas City offense. But I do think that what you have seen is that incredibly, I mean, I personally think this. Okay, this is me, and some of you say, yep, dumb as rocks. I really think the Kansas City Chiefs win in a lot of respects in spite of some of the issues that Pat Mahomes has. Like, I know everybody thinks it's great that he does all these cute things with the way he throws the football and the off-balance nature, but part of the reason that they have so much success is guys like Pat Kelsey, a guy like Tyreek Hill, who just makes, plays happen. The best part of Pat Mahomes' game is probably keeping the ball alive and being willing to take risks that other players won't. Those risks, however, can be costly, but also beneficial. It's almost, remember, I'll give you a prime example. This is a story I've told a couple of times here on the show during the 7 or 8 years we've been on the air. My coach in high school was always talking about fundamentals. I mean, always talking about fundamentals. Fundamentals this, fundamentals that. And I think we will all safely agree that fundamentals are an extremely important part of sports. And Pat Mahomes, while he has, I'm sure, incredible quote-unquote fundamentals, is still very much a sort of a freelance type player. And so at some point along the way in his career, 9 times out of 10, he might get away with it, but eventually it's going to burn you. And the fundamental players are going to make mistakes. But if and when Pat Mahomes makes an error, I don't think it's going to be because his fundamentals were lax, as much as I think it'll be because he was being a little bit too flashy. Like, fundamentals can protect you to a degree, but they're not without flaw. But I can remember my coach in high school talking about this kid on our team, and this is kind of my thoughts on how this all works, right? When you make the big play, the coach is never going to care how you make it. Never going to care how you make it. You could be flashy, nonchalant, whatever. And I think back to thinking about this kid on my high school basketball team. Had he finished with a slam dunk to win a ball game, an unnecessary slam dunk to win a ball game, and for the standpoint of Pat Mahomes, say an unnecessary sidearm pass that wins a game. Well, coach is going to come to the locker room, and coach is going to say, guys, that's the way big players step up and make big plays in big games. He's not going to be so focused on the fundamentals because he got the dub. He got the win, and the kid made the dunk. Last second dunk. Didn't need it. Could have made the layup. Jammed it. But, buddy, you best believe if you go up and you slam the ball off the back of the iron and miss and you lose that game by 1, in the locker room, my same coach is going to be going, why can't you make the fundamental play? Why do you have to be flashy? Like, that to me is sort of the Pat Mahomes deal. And look, in the regular season, when you got 16, 17 games, and you're probably better from the standpoint of talent surrounding you than most people, you can get away with that and still have a pretty productive record. You can go 10-6, 11-5, whatever. I know they played 17 games this year, 12-5, whatever. But when you get into go time, when you get into the playoffs, like, those things, the errors and mistakes that you make can be amplified. And so from that standpoint, if I'm sort of watching all of this unfold, if you will, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, if Pat Mahomes makes a key mistake on something that we would not deem to be a, quote, fundamental type play, that's the price you pay for the benefit that you get of having him as your star quarterback. Like, that's the price you pay. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to work out. And I'm watching this game over the weekend. And Josh Allen, look, for all of the things I'm saying about Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen has a little bit of that in him too. Not quite as much showmanship, but very good with the ball in his hand. Very good rolling and throwing back across the body, doing the things you wouldn't, quote, teach a player to do. But at some point, once the stakes get higher and the teams you play get better, those things can catch up with you. And I personally prefer to see more fundamental play than flashy play when you're in big stakes and high stakes ball games. But Pat Mahomes got away with it this past Sunday, in my estimation, because of the skilled playmakers around him. Stay with us. Final segment of hour number one. Coming up in hour number two, William Qualkenbush joins the program. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. Text line and phone line. And again, we'll talk with Qualk about the Clemson Tiger basketball team, a big victory over Pittsburgh. Tomorrow they'll take on the Duke Blue Devils. That's a makeup game from earlier this year, and certainly Clemson's size issues are more than glaring when it comes into this matchup. And, you know, for anybody that's followed college basketball for an extended period, I mean, listen, Coach Mike Krzyzewski in his final year, that makes this game must-see TV. For me, I wouldn't care if Clemson was the last place team in the last place conference in the world. I mean, I kind of enjoy and have had a chance to watch a couple of games with the Duke Blue Devils, and because of his legacy, whether you like him or not, I've had moments where I've hated him. I've had moments where I root for him. I think the concepts of his success come down to a lot of the same principles that we see in John Wooden and Dabo Swanny, and certainly that next play mentality that he has, not allowing yourself to wallow in self-pity or concern about something that's happened in the past, only focusing on the future. 803 again, 450-0086, William Qualkenbush coming up. And I'm going to talk to Qualk too about the NFL playoffs this weekend, because I'm telling you, man, it was as good as I have ever seen. And for me, it's a step towards the reason that I would like to see expansion collegiately. And for all the people, I brought this up a little bit earlier, but I didn't really dive into it. For all the people who are like, how does that correlate? Or why do you think you get better games? Again, it's about trimming the fat. This is not about what last weekend would have looked like collegiately. It's what this weekend would have looked like collegiately, and what potentially next weekend could look like. And could there be a blowout on the horizon? Could somebody just get the doors blown off of them? Yeah. Yeah. In the conference championship? Sure. But the goal for me would be to present, say right now in the college football playoff, there are 3 games a year. Well, if 2 of them are no good, then more than half of the games are bad. But if there are 8 or 9 games, or however many there would need to be in order, I guess it's 8 in order to do the playoffs like the NFL, my hope is that 4 to 5 of them will be really good games. And then guess what? More than half of the games are good. More than half. That's what I want to see. I want to see the elimination of Cincinnati and Michigan earlier. But then we'll just get the SEC, a bunch of SEC teams. Well, you know what? If the SEC teams earn their way into whatever scenarios are set up to get into the playoffs, and then they go out and beat Michigan, if Ole Miss beats Michigan, or whoever would have been playing Michigan in my little scenario. Trying to take a look here. Michigan would have got a bye. Michigan would have been taking on Utah. If Utah beat Michigan this past weekend, then whoop-de-doo. That's just, it is what it is. Tennessee, the Titans got beat. Number 1 seeds, both dropped. Packers got beat. Whoop-de-doo. It is what it is. And I'm okay with it. I want you to be okay with it. I want you to embrace the fact that there is legitimate potential for better postseason games collegiately with a larger playoff. Will Swanny then would steal from the regular season? What do you mean? It would enhance the regular season. Keep more teams in it longer and make more games important at the end. How is that bad? Right now, if you lose 2 games The next 10 on your schedule, yeah, they're good for something, but probably not getting into the college football playoff. So what do you want, Swanny? Mediocrity? Everybody gets a trophy? No. Not at all. I want better playoff games and I want more playoff games. End of story. End of story. Sticking with college football, we mentioned this earlier in the week, but it was officially announced today. Chancey Stuckey, former Clemson Tiger quarterback / wide receiver, played in the NFL for several years as a wide receiver, left Baylor and is joining. He was an assistant, by the way, at Clemson. One of the staffers, I guess is a better term than an assistant. But he was 2 years on Dabo Swinney's staff in 2019 and 2020, took the role at wide receivers coach for Baylor in 2021, and now advances to Notre Dame. So our good buddy, Chancey Stuckey, who's been a friend of this program for many years, getting an opportunity with the Golden Domers up in South Bend, Indiana. You know Tim Beret has to be excited about that, to see a Clemson kid arriving in Notre Dame to be a part of the Fighting Irish program. And, if you've ever had a chance to talk to Chancey, hard not to root for him. Hard not to pull for him and wish him a ton of success in his capacity at Notre Dame outside of one game when they, of course, play against your Clemson Tigers. 803-450-0086 coming up on the program in just a few minutes. William Qualkenbush will be a part of the program. Again, don't forget, your Clemson Tigers and the Duke Blue Devils will be facing off tomorrow. Again, this is a rescheduled game from earlier in the year. COVID-19 still having its way to a degree on the world of sports, especially as it pertains to scheduling. That game will be in Durham at 7 o'clock on ESPN2 at Cameron Indoor Stadium. So again, your Clemson Tigers at Duke tomorrow, 7 o'clock on ESPN, and that all coming off of the heels of Clemson's blowout victory over the weekend, knocking Pitt off 75-48 was the final score this past weekend. Clemson breaking a 3-game schneid in the Atlantic Coast Conference. All right, so we'll hit a quick break. We'll come back. Hour 2, we'll rock and roll along with you as our good buddy William Qualkenbush steps into the arena to go one-on-one with the great one. Looking forward to chatting it up with Qualk right here on the show that shakes the Southland when we get back at the top of the hour. Make sure you keep it locked on Fox Sports Radio 1400 and on the iHeart Radio app.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set. Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's Drive Time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan with you, and our good buddy William Qualkenbush back at it with us on a Monday. We were off of his weekly schedule last week, but Qualk, glad to have you back on, man. And what a wonderful weekend of NFL football. We don't talk about it much here on the show that shakes the Southland, but my gracious, what a weekend, huh?
Yeah, it was fantastic, man. I got to tell you, it was, I think it was probably, without going back and checking all of history, I think it was probably the best divisional round of the NFL playoffs that we've ever seen. I think that Bills Chiefs, had it not gone to overtime, would have been the greatest NFL game ever played, not in a Super Bowl. Sadly, I actually can't say that now because the overtime rules are so egregious, and I just can't imagine. I really can't. I can't imagine any other presumably serious sporting event or any other presumably serious sports entity allowing a game of that magnitude to be decided in that way. It just totally boggles my mind. Other than that, it was a great weekend, though.
Well, I mean, look, in fairness, the NFL playoff rule overtime rule is a lot better than it used to be.
It is better than it used to be.
I mean, that was really bad.
And look, I'll say this too. We were outraged 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago when it might have been 2 years ago.
Tom Brady,
the years run together, don't they? Yeah, when Brady did the same thing to Mahomes, and we saw a great duel of quarterbacks, and one of the quarterbacks never actually got on the field. And I don't know that it was any different, but you just kind of got the sense that whoever won the coin toss was going to win the game, right? That Kansas City was not stopping Buffalo, that Buffalo was not stopping Kansas City, and so it was almost like a foregone conclusion. And that's not. I mean, there are a lot of people who would use it as an indictment on defenses. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the defenses were gassed, and the defenses had played such a strange style of football for the final quarter or so of play, at least the last 3 or 4 possessions apiece, that it's almost weird to re-engage into a true game setting as a defense. There are a lot of people going, well, you got to play defense. I'm thinking, well, I mean, that's fine, but what they were doing the last few minutes wasn't like quote unquote defense anyway. They were defending, obvious passing situations and trying not to give up big plays. So I felt bad for Buffalo in that regard because it did feel like that it was a simple 50-50. And once it was 50-50, it was 100-0 that Kansas City was going to win because I don't think either defense would have stopped the other offense.
One of the things that I did say that, the defense had their chance, but I'm assuming that your thought process on what the NFL overtime should look like is similar to what I think it should be, which would be that both teams get the football. And really what that does is it puts a lot of pressure on the first team to score. And if they score a touchdown, to decide if they're going to go for 2 or not, because the second that Buffalo gets the ball back, if they drive down and score, they could go for 2 to win the ball game. Or put the ball back in Kansas City's hands, and then I guess any score at that point would win it, a field goal, etc.
That's correct. I would say that as long as both teams touch the football, it really doesn't even bother me exactly what it looks like. I mean, you could put them at midfield, you could give them 2 minutes, you could put them at the 25, you could kick off. It doesn't matter. I mean, you could have them stand on their heads for first down. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. As long as Buffalo gets the same chance as Kansas City to go down and score, that's totally fine with me. Here's the thing that really bothers me, okay? In every other sport, okay, let's say let's take the NHL and NFL out of it. We're talking professional basketball, the NBA, we're talking MLS, we're talking everything else. When there are when there's an additional period, it looks and feels very similar to the periods that we already had, right? In the NBA, it's just like college basketball. You get fewer minutes, but it's basically a fifth quarter, right? It's a fifth quarter, or in the case of college basketball, third half. In college football, it looks different, but you still have a tit for tat where teams get to go back and forth. The 2-point conversion rule is a disaster. They should just do away with that and just let them keep playing. But I digress.
Right.
Point being, I don't even think you need to go to the competition committee for the NFL and say, hey, let's totally scrap this overtime. I don't like NFL overtime in the regular season, but I understand why it's in there because giving us a winner in the game is not the only thing that matters, right? I mean, look, if giving us a winner in the game was the only thing that mattered, we would have no player safety, like targeting wouldn't exist. There would be no player safety standards whatsoever. They wouldn't exist. Because they don't actually make it easier, in my opinion. They don't actually make it easier to figure out who won the game or give you a quote-unquote fairer outcome. There are things like player safety, and there are things like the players' union. There are factors like time served and this, that, and the other. There are these factors that come into play when it's a regular season. That's totally fine. That's why the NHL has a shootout. You know what the NHL doesn't do in the playoffs? Shootouts. They don't. You know what soccer does? College soccer, I've been to a lot of Clemson soccer in my day, Swanny. College soccer, they do 2 overtimes that are golden goal, which, by the way, theoretically, one team could have the ball for all of overtime and score without the other one getting it. That's just not normally how that happens.
Right.
But in postseason, they don't have the same rules. They have different rules because it's important that we have an outcome that is somewhat legitimate. They don't do penalty kicks. They just let you tie in regular season. Just say in the playoffs, like the NHL, just say in the playoffs, we're going to have 10 minutes and you're going to play. And if at the end of 10 minutes you're still tied, we're going to do it again. But we're going to just basically play it out like a quarter. We're going to do something that allows both teams to have a chance to get the ball and potentially score, and both teams have to stop the other. One of the things I hate, Swanny, and I know I'm ranting a bit on this, but one of the things that I hate, look, one of the things I hate on this is people saying, oh, well, Buffalo defense is part of the game. You know who didn't have to deal with that part of the game? Kansas City. It's ridiculous to say, well, Buffalo, you should have stopped them when you're not asking both teams to stop them. Can you imagine that argument extending into any other thing? Well, you know, I understand that you never got to have the ball, basketball team, but defense is part of the game. And if you wanted to win, you should have stopped them for the whole 40-minute college basketball game, because then you might have won in overtime where only you get the ball. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid and laughable that people will go, well, you should have played better defense, as if both teams had to play defense. Look, I also don't like this. I don't like that people are second-guessing Buffalo's coaching. Like if Kansas City didn't win a coin toss, that we wouldn't be out there crucifying their coaches for putting Travis Kelce under center to run an option to the weak side of the field on 3rd and 1. Let's not pretend like Buffalo did all these coaching blunders and that's why they lost. Like Kansas City didn't also have major coaching and schematic blunders in the game. Yeah, guys falling down in the secondary, guys running wide open on 4th and long. Are you kidding me? You can't do that. So I just think all of these are laughably dumb. These are ignorant arguments. There is no justification for it. Fix the overtime or stop trying to pretend that you're a serious league.
He's on Twitter at Qualk Talk. You can follow him over there and have a good time with him. He's guaranteed not to rant on social media. So, Qualk, as it pertains to the coaching situation, I thought the most egregious thing I saw was not squibbing or kind of line driving the final kickoff if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, there are 13 seconds left. I know you're thinking this, excuse me, if you're the Buffalo Bills, I know there's 13 seconds left and you think you've got Kansas City in trouble, but man, that runs for maybe 5 seconds off the clock.
Totally agree with you. I felt like Buffalo tried to play the game basically straight up as if the clock wasn't a factor. And if there is one thing that Buffalo is guilty of, well, I really think it's two things, but it's one main thing. It's that it's almost like, you know the saying, the sideline's your friend as a defender. Force guys to the sideline because the sideline is, in basketball, it's the 6th defender. In football, it's the 12th defender. Well, the clock is an extra defender at this point. The Chiefs have 2 plays. So what do you need to do? You just need to get that clock to 0 as quickly as possible. Now, were they concerned because they had almost given up a couple of big special teams plays in a game? Perhaps. I have to admit, I did not go back and look to see if Tyreek Hill was deep on that kickoff and if they didn't want the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands. I have no idea. If I were Kansas City, I definitely would have had him back there for that very reason. I also think that the classic, you don't want to play prevent defense in Madden or NCAA football. What do? You go 2-man under. That's exactly what the Bills did when they gave up a 64-yard touchdown to Hill because he beat 2-man under and then sprinted past everyone. So the best prevent defense there would have been to jam Hill and Kelce and have everybody else back. But that didn't work before. The Chiefs were in good position there. So I'm not sure, or excuse me, the Bills were in good position there and they didn't make the tackle. I agree with you. The only thing that I think they should have done outside of doing something crazy, like we had a caller today who's a basketball coach, and he's a great basketball mind here in the area, who said he would have just dropped all 11. And he would have just said, you know what? I don't even care about rushing the passer. We'll make those offensive linemen stand there and pick their noses, but we're going to have plenty of bodies in there so that it takes you time. Because what he said was you don't have to rush the passer because the passer's already rushed.
Right.
I mean, he was just – and I thought, you know what? That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Just drop 11. Let them go all the way back there. Just make sure it takes all the time left. I thought that was great.
Just put
them on. Like, put some receivers in the game, D. Put some safety second level. Put some corners up there short. Just everybody in coverage. I thought it was a great idea.
I would like to see it. I'm not going to lie. I'd like to see it. William Qualcombus joins us every Monday. So how about the other games? I mean, all 3 of those road teams walk-off field goal winners. I mean, we don't talk a lot about NFL, as I mentioned here, Qualk, but to me, it inspires my hope for a bigger college football playoff because, as I said a week ago, I think some of the fat gets cut out and you're left with just the meat of the league. And I know it's not always perfect, but man, this weekend really, I felt like harnessed my arguments that we need a little bit of a larger college football playoff.
Well, I would agree to this extent, okay? And I remember our mutual friend Dutch Coleman and we had this discussion when they were first, we were on radio together when they were first going through the initial college football playoff. How many teams should it be? That conversation, I mean, you remember, it was years of that conversation.
Sure.
How many teams should there be? What I did is I looked at the AP poll and I said, for the most part, at the end of the season, there are about 4 teams that separate themselves from the pack. Now, some years where they're 2, yes. Some years where they're 6, yes. But the average was generally 4. Here's what's interesting about the NFL that's different from college. I think you can actually nail that number down in college, and it makes sense. In the NFL, because of all the rules designed to encourage parity, there is going to be a different cutoff point every year. And I also think who makes it in makes it a different cutoff point. Here's your example. I feel like there are a lot of people anti-expansion on the grounds that adding the 7th team this year didn't amount to a hill of beans. Okay? Fair. Philadelphia, not a quality team, didn't beat a single playoff team to get in. I know they were listen, I understand that. Pittsburgh, not a quality team, had no chance to beat the Chiefs. I get that. What if the Colts make it in? What if the Chargers make it in? To me, those teams would have had a better chance to go to Kansas City and win just because of the nature of the matchup, but they didn't get in. So you could have theoretically had 9 teams in the AFC and maybe like 6 in the NFC, and those would have been the logical cutoff point this year. Or if you're holding it to a higher standard, you might have said in the AFC, okay, like Bengals, you're good, like a couple teams, but we don't need 6. We don't need anything below 5. We don't need anything below like the Raiders and the Steelers. Like, we don't need y'all.
Right.
Y'all can go away, and we're just going to have 5 in the playoffs. You're going to have rounds where there just aren't compelling matchups because, like you said, you have to trim the fat just a little bit. And then maybe you trim the fat. Maybe the 3-6 is just a bad matchup. Maybe the 4-5 is just a bad matchup, but it ends up being blowouts. Whatever the case may be, at some point, you're going to get to better matchups. And that's what we saw in the NFL this weekend. Look, it could be conceivable. We talked about this on our show today, that when you get down to 4, just like the college football playoff, you get down to 4 and it's been blowouts. Almost every game, almost every year is a blowout. It's not any good at all. It is highly probable that at least one of these 2 games is a blowout. I think the Bengals are not going to match up well with Kansas City, particularly on the road. I think their luck has run out a little bit. Now, the 49ers, all they do is beat the Rams. I think they've won 6 in a row. So that one may be a little more competitive. We're not talking about expanding the NFL playoffs from 14 to 20 or whatever because the Final Four was dumb, right? If it's two blowouts. Or we're not trying to contract and say, oh, well, the rest of the playoffs don't matter because the 2 best teams separated themselves. I totally agree. This is the best justification for having more quality games or for having more teams in, because the point is to have higher quality games, more games mattering for more teams most of the time, the most. That's exactly what you need to have. That should be the goal. More games mattering the most, the more teams more of the time. That's to me, that should be the goal for every organization.
Yeah.
For college football, that should be the goal. And I think even for fans of NFL teams that lost this past weekend, you would have to say that the ride was fun. The game was really entertaining. And the NFL, once the ratings come out, I think the ratings are going to be bananas because so many people jumped on these games late because they all were riveting right down to the very end. Even the Rams-Bucks, it was a blowout at one point. People probably left that game and came running back when they saw that the Bucks had a chance to take it to overtime, and then the Rams had a chance to win it late.
It was just awesome. And I'm with you. I think the expanded playoff not only enhances the postseason, it enhances the end of the year for a lot more teams having a chance to get in. And I think additionally, if we talk about percent, right? Like right now, there's 3 games in the playoff. If the first 2 are bad, then over half of the games are bad. If you have an 18 playoff, and you have 7 games, maybe you get 4 good ones. That's more than half. That's all I want, better football. And so who knows, man? It'll be something to see what they end up doing. All right, Qualk, final thing, and we'll get you out here on a Monday afternoon. The Clemson Tiger men's basketball team over the weekend snapped a 3-game skid. They take on the Duke Blue Devils tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at Cameron Indoor, where they only have 4 victories all time in the history of Clemson's program. Going to be tough for sure against Coach K's squad, but you just kind of felt like Clemson had to have that game against Pitt. That wasn't a great Pitt team. You'd already lost to Boston College, a game you probably shouldn't have squandered. I mean, where is your head right now when you take a look at Brad Brownell's club as we head towards February?
Well, I got to say, a couple things about this Duke matchup. First of all, athletically, I think Duke is a real issue for Clemson. I just think, I think with Banchero and with Williams on the front line, with who they bring off their bench, I actually think the guard matchups are okay. I watched their game against Syracuse, and Duke got bored at times in the game, and so Syracuse would come back, but then Keels or somebody or one of the guards, they would just lob the ball up to Williams, and he would just dunk over everyone. I mean, it's almost like Duke, whenever they want, can go to any number of cheat codes and just get a bucket, especially in that building. One thing, Clemson got to shoot it well. I think they got to get 12 threes. And David Collins has got to be able to attack window more. I'm really interested in this matchup between Collins and Moore. I feel like they're going to be matched up against each other. We know that Hunter Tyson and PJ Hall are banged up. They're going to have to play great. I think PJ's got to have 20 points in the game. I think probably you got to get Williams in foul trouble because from a strength standpoint, Duke is still strong, inside because they can bring guys off the bench. Theo John is the main one that's got a little beef to him. But to me, if Hall can get Williams in foul trouble, I think that's an interesting matchup. I think Hall can take advantage of John some. You've just got to play your best basketball. You got to play your best basketball. And in a gym like that, you let the chips fall where they may. And the talent gap is not going to close itself. But the effort gap, you could probably close that. And the execution gap, you could close that, particularly in areas where Duke, because they're so athletic and they're young, they do get bored in the game. So you can come back, and you just got to be able to withstand that for long spurts.
We'll see what happens tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, ESPN2. Qualt, buddy, always great catching up to you, my man.
Thanks, Swanny. Always good to be with you.
There he is, William Qualkenbush on the show that shakes the Southland. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line, again, be a part of the program anytime, any place, anywhere as we head towards our number 2 here on a Monday afternoon. Incredible. Again, you know what? I didn't tell you how to listen to Qualk Show each and every day from 12 until 3 o'clock, out of bounds with Qualk and Kelly on 105.5 The Roar in the upstate. So we'll hit a quick break. We'll come back. A big decommit from one of the top programs in college football and the top recruiting class in the country. We'll discuss that on the flip side here on a Monday afternoon on the show that shakes the Southland. Stay with us for more Clemson Sports Talk on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Appreciate William Qualkenbush for joining us on a Monday afternoon. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you enjoyed the weather. Got out in a little snow, a little SC snow. You know what I think is a little bit disappointing about South Carolina snow is the fact that we don't get that good roll up a snowman snow. Didn't really get that until maybe Sunday. A couple of days after you got the snow, you found a little patch over in the corner with your kids, and that could roll up a little bit, but then you couldn't make a snowman worth 10 cents because there just wasn't enough snow on the ground. All of that being said, though, I do enjoy a little flurry from time to time, and I hope you got to go out and have a good time with it. Again, you can be a part of this program anytime, even rain, sleet, or snow. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. So I mentioned before the break a big decommit that took place over the weekend, actually earlier today. 5-star linebacker Harold Perkins, who committed to Texas A&M during the All-American Bowl back on January, the 2nd? The Under Armour All-American Bowl. He decommitted from Texas A&M. He's the number 4 prospect in the 2022 class and the top outside linebacker, 6'3", 210 pounds, out of Cypress Park High School over in Cypress, Texas. He's again joining the number 1 prospect overall in the 2022 class, Walter Nolan, along with defensive tackle Gabe Brownlow-Dindy, who we interviewed at one point along the way during his recruitment, and receiver Evan Stewart, a couple of the top guys in that class over at A&M, and that's the top class in the country. What is so surprising to me about all of this is, first off, the fact that you're talking about a situation where the hay, to a degree, is already mostly in the barn for especially for A&M. And you were a part of the number 1 class in the country. I mean, that to me, like, I can't imagine that you make this selection 22 days ago to come to Texas A&M, to be a part of this. You know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, you back off of your commitment and you're looking to go elsewhere. Like, it makes me kind of appreciate, honestly, Clemson and their strategies to recruiting. And I'm not saying that guys don't flip late or whatever, but it sure is hard to put myself in a scenario where I feel like this type of situation plays out for Clemson or against Clemson, so to speak. Like, to me, I mean, this is something that is probably not, quote unquote, going to be unique to Texas A&M. But I think in the mind's eye of a lot of these kids, their commitment and their word doesn't mean anything. And that's kind of the difference that Dabo Swinney has. You know, that's why they don't offer many players. It's very, if you get an offer from Clemson, trust me, a lot of people don't have that. Some of these schools will offer 275 guys. Clemson, you'll be lucky if they crack over 100. Perkins, again, the number 4 prospect in the 2022 class, recently visited Florida with their new head coach, Billy Napier. He's also going to visit LSU this weekend. He'll make his final decision on February 2nd, the first day of the new signing period. So a month after he made his decision, he will make a second decision. And again, all of these decisions taking place within a month of each other. Commitment. What does it mean to you and your team and your program? And it sure does feel like for Dabo Swinney and this Clemson Tiger squad, that word is your bond. And it says a lot about who you are. And I don't think, I mean, honestly, I'm not telling you that guys who don't want to commit to Clemson right off of the cuff don't get recruited by Clemson. I'm not telling you that, but I do wonder if they were to ask a player, say, hey, would you be interested in going ahead and committing or whatever? Do you want to go ahead and commit? And the kid says, I really want to weigh all my options, but I'll commit. I still want to go look. I mean, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Clemson, and I know Dabo Swinney kind of does this, says, no, I want you to hold off. But, I mean, I don't know how Clemson would even feel about that. Like, I don't know if they would look at it and say, well, you know what, this kid doesn't have the same kind of commitment level that we kind of want out of our players. So I'm not telling you they back off of stars, but it is, you wonder if Swinney and his staff have some probing questions that sort of deliver them towards a feeling about the player as far as what commitment means to him. But yeah, seeing that news over the weekend kind of got me thinking about it. And again, Clemson obviously still targeting Caden Story, the former Auburn commit, was in town for his official visit. Again, he's a 4-star defensive tackle. I saw him and his mom and Nick Eason going down the slide there at the Reeves building, and Eason didn't stick the landing. I don't know what the penalty is for not sticking the landing in terms of the world of college football. I know there's penalties for it in sport, but Nick Eason, yeah, he did not stick the landing. But again, Caden Story on campus. We'll give you a little update on his situation coming up here in just a few minutes. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, thank you to William Qualkenbush for joining the program as he hung out with us for 20 minutes just a little bit ago. And I hope you really enjoyed that Terrell McIntyre interview. And again, McIntyre's name was put in the rafters at Little John Coliseum over the weekend. So that's really cool for a buddy of ours and a guy that's been a part of this show to have that, have that success and now that recognition in the arena in which he put smiles on a ton of Clemson fans' faces. Happy Monday, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. No live video today. I'm going to put it up a little bit later. Had a little late start to the show, and sometimes when you have to miss a segment or whatever over on the live feed, I would rather just run it all in a all consecutively without I don't know, just I don't want to miss any of it, right? So I'll give you the full show once it's all finished over on the live stream. Well, that's funny because I'm saying that to those of you listening on the live stream, but the video stream of the show will come up later today. Does that make sense? I hope so. Some of you are like, what am I in a time warp, Swanny? What are you talking about here? 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, thank you all for being a part of this show as we continue to move through. Again, Clemson Tiger basketball coming up tomorrow as they will take on the Duke Blue Devils on the road in Durham, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. That is a rescheduled game from earlier this year. As for recruiting, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Let's jump back into that real quick here. So Caden Story, the biggest story at this point, Clemson's still trying to lock him down. Again, he was a commit to Auburn, defensive tackle, 4-star prospect, who was on campus at Clemson. Again, I mentioned going down the slide with Nick Eason, but and his mom as well at Clemson. But, I got to thinking about the fact that one of the things, too, with Clemson and their recruiting, I think that probably helps them is that even when you have a depth of talent like Clemson's got on that defensive front and you start kind of going through the names, Tyler Davis, KJ Henry, Xavier Thomas, Brian Brzee, Miles Murphy, like you start getting Trey Williams, Rook Oro, row your boat gently down the stream. Itanosa Rubin. I mean, you just start going further and further, and you're like, man, it's a deep, deep group. Why would top-tier players want to come, play or be behind these guys? And, if you're recruiting at the top of college football, you're going to be recruiting guys that are being recruited by other teams where they're probably going to have to sit for a little bit of an extended period or maybe a year or so. But I also think, too, that you got some stories at Clemson right now with Itanosa Rubin and Rook that, to me, tell the story of what this program can be for any kid who comes in and sure has to bide their time a little bit, but it's a situation where it's set up to allow you to mature. And Dabo Swinney says it all the time. Football is a developmental game. And you don't have to come in and be Sammy Watkins game one, year one. You just got to work your way into a situation where you become a proven commodity that can go out and do the job when necessary. And hopefully by the time your career comes to a conclusion, you've benefited by helping your team make the college football playoff, maybe even have won a national championship. And I really do think that while, yeah, it's great to have the Brian Brzee out there in front and the big name freshmen that show off. It's also important to have valuable depth and guys behind those other individuals who can speak to these young men that are coming in to tour the campus or see the program or find out about, the Paul journey and all of that, and say, look, man, it's a lot bigger than just football here. And even if, you're a guy that goes through the system and never gets a ton of snaps because somebody else comes in or whatever the situation is that happens while you're on campus, I think the lessons that can be delivered by guys who have been in and around it are, look, it's bigger than football here. And that, to some people, probably at one point along the way when Clemson wasn't winning at an elite level, and I'm talking about fans. I'm talking about you, the fans. Like if Dabo Swanny came out and said, man, we're not all about winning championships. It's about the culture that we're instilling. And we believe that a championship culture will create a championship or bring a championship to our program. Like whatever reasons that you kind of fall in line with on that front. Some of you would have said, oh man, I can't believe he's saying that. But once you win a couple of titles and the coach sticks with that mindset, you're like, well, maybe there's something to it. Maybe there's something to the more well-rounded individual, the player that maybe is willing to sacrifice for the team, over themselves and being more team-oriented. And I think that's what Clemson seeks in a lot of respects. Like we've always said that I don't think Clemson would take a 5-star kid. I really don't believe this at this point. I don't think Clemson would take a 5-star kid with red flags. And that might get them. That might burn them every once in a while. You might have a kid that Clemson did not recruit because they were worried about this kid that goes on, doesn't have any problems collegiately anywhere or wherever they end up. And you go, man, I can't believe we missed out on whoever, with the reality or the process behind the decision being maybe Clemson felt that it was best to miss on that kid. And that if they landed him, it wasn't going to be a fit for them as far as the culture that they've established. And if you don't believe that a selfish attitude and a kid that's not bought in can't hurt your program, man, I don't know where you've been, because that's just the nature of what you deal with guys who aren't committed. They can pull down an entire – that one bad apple spoils the bunch, and it can fester like a dirty wound. Final segment, 803-450-0086, coming up here in just a few minutes on the show that shakes the Southland. I can't believe 2 hours in the books. I cannot. Where has the day gone? All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back. I'll take a look at some of the latest news going on in the world of sports. And we'll keep you updated on that, plus much more here on the show that shakes the Southland. It is Clemson Sports Talk. Again, put the .com on it, doggone it, and head over to our website. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Monday afternoon, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. Do you still have, I talked about snow earlier, we still got like a snowman. He's a sad little snowman. I told my daughter, I was like, if he keeps shrinking like this, we'll go pick him up in a little bit and put him in the refrigerator or the freezer. He started off pretty big. Now, that is the beauty of a snowman, though. Like the way that it melts away, the way it quote unquote dies. At least once it gets small enough, it kind of stays proportional and just keeps on. I know it's sailing, but fading away. Yeah, exactly. He is fading away here. God, you know what? I'm just sad that Rob Sanders didn't get to hear me sing that. Doggone it. I should have given him a heads up. Honestly. I should have said, Rob, I'm going to be singing in the final segment today. Make sure you tune in. 803-450-0086. The South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame announced their induction class, and longtime Clemson athletic trainer Fred Hoover is a part of the 2022 class. So congratulations are in order. Sidney Rice also in the class. Mike Ayers, who's the former head coach at Wofford, and Judy Rose, who was a Blacksburg native, played basketball at Winthrop. But Fred Hoover, for those of you that don't know, was hired by legendary Clemson head coach Frank Howard. Served as a trainer for Clemson's team from 1959 to 1998 and began working the sidelines 7 years prior to the existence of Howard's Rock. Hoover worked 446 consecutive Clemson football games and was estimated to have supervised 4,500 Clemson football practices. He worked with 7 head coaches, 11 ACC championships, 16 bowl teams, 38 All-Americans, 16 NFL All-Pro players, and first-round picks, plus 110 future NFL players. He ran down the hill 207 times, falling just once. So Hoover was inducted into the Clemson Athletic Hall of Fame back in 1982 and now is in the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame. So congratulations again to legendary and longtime Clemson trainer Fred Hoover on his induction into the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame class. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Be a part of the program anytime. Bobby in New Jersey says, Swanny, what is the ACC equivalent to Clemson basketball? I say Louisville. A few titles in hoops, usually competing for a conference title, and the football team has had limited success without a whiff of a championship. So who is the Clemson? Man. Who's the Clemson basketball of ACC football? So you're close. You get the rug put out from underneath you. I mean, can I put Miami there, Bobby, at this point? Would that be – because you think about like – and I know they've got more tradition than Clemson basketball, but I mean, their expectation was that they were going to be there every year. And maybe Clemson fans don't feel that way about basketball, so maybe that's not fair. What about Georgia Tech? About the yellow? I don't know, Bobby. That's tough. Because I don't know what the NC State? I got to think about that, Bobby. You're giving me a conundrum here. I'll tell you what. Let's put it up to the people. So who is the Atlantic Coast Conference football version of Clemson basketball? I mean, I think if you get rid of Miami's national titles, which I know you can't, but I mean, what I'm saying is during their time in the ACC, they've been in the ACC championship once, and they've been relatively average, mediocre some seasons. I think it's Miami, Bobby. I'd love to hear what other people think. Let me know. Who is the Atlantic Coast Conference football version of Clemson basketball? I'm going Miami. I'm holding firm, all in, pushing my chips in on the table. Thank you all for hanging out with us today. Appreciate William Qualkenbush. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Terrell McIntyre. We'll have it up over on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. And, I got a sneaky feeling. I'd love to hear from some of you to let me know if you had never heard that interview before. That's also important to me. Because during the downtime, if we could re-rack some of the old archived interviews and give you some high-quality content with some great guests, man, I'd love to do it. And that was a fun interview with Terrell McIntyre. I laughed. I laughed as much listening to it today as I did when we recorded it. No kidding you. I mean, he is a great guy. And, man, what an honor to be in the rafters at Little John Coliseum. Again, thank you to all our guests, William Qualkenbush and everybody else. We'll be back tomorrow. And, of course, until then, as always, check out the website, ClemsonSportsTalk.com. And y'all take care now, and go Tigers.